Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Silhouette Sunday video. Today I'm going to be working on a set of cards to give as a gift, in addition to some cards that I'm actually going to give out to several people myself. As many of you probably noticed online, a lot of people were posting things about Autism Awareness Day, which was technically yesterday, but because it was Saturday and I work at a school, we don't do any of our activities until the Monday after. So today, that's all I'm doing is working on cards, and I thought I would share that with you. Now, the card that I'm going to, or the cards, because really it's plural, that I'm going to be working on are going to kind of be a hybrid card because I'm not going to die cut all of it using my Silhouette. I'm only going to cut part of it with my Silhouette, and then I'm going to cut the rest with my Sizzix just so I can get a little bit of a cleaner edge. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've rambled on enough. The first thing I need to do is change my page settings to a letter size because I'm going to actually print my sentiment. I'm not even going to stamp it because I'm going to be making so many of these. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to a letter size piece of paper, so an 8.5 by 11. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle so I have a frame of reference for how big my other shapes need to be. So I'm going to uncheck this because I don't want to lock aspect ratio. And I'm going to change this to 3.5 by 4, and let's say 3/4. This is how big the manual die is that I'm going to use. And I'm doing it this way actually so that I can skip the print and cut part, which will make sense in a little bit when you see what it looks like. But anyways, I have this here. This is my frame of reference so I know how big I can make my stuff. So I'm going to go ahead to my library and I'm going to use a puzzle piece. And I'm sure this is going to open huge. Yes, it did. So I'm going to select it, right click, ungroup. And now I can delete the pieces I don't want. So I'm going to get rid of these and just hold on to these two. And these are way too big. So I'm going to select both of them by drawing a box around both and just making them smaller. And I want them to be fairly large because I'm going to turn this into a shaker card. So I'm just going to grab both of them again and make them a little bigger. Okay, so for my sentiment, I'm just going to type thank you across the bottom here. And I'm going to be using a font called Happy Fox. Now, this is the font I want to use. It's all capital letters, the font itself, but I don't really like the letter spacing. So instead of changing the spacing of the letters individually, I'm just going to use this option right here that says character spacing and crank it up quite a bit. So my letter spacing looks pretty good now. They're not right on top of each other. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this in with the color black because I'm going to print this. And I'm going to select the line color menu and turn the line color off because I don't want anything. And then I'm going to go to my cut settings options or my cut settings window and I'm going to say no cut because I don't want to cut that sentiment. So once I have all that done, I can go back to moving everything where I want it to be. So I've already decided I want this puzzle piece to be fairly large, but this is a little too big. So we're going to shrink that down. And then I'm going to go ahead and select the sentiment and the puzzle piece by holding down the shift button on my keyboard. And I'm going to go ahead and center this. So we'll go to the align window and click align center. And then right click and group it to make sure it stays together. And then I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process for this one. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've duplicated the thank you on the right hand side. And I don't want this box right here because I'm going to be using a manual die cutter, like I said. So I'm going to go ahead and click that box that I was using as a guide and hit delete. And then I'm going to draw a box around everything, right click, and then copy and paste. And I'm going to bring this down and cut this down here. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, don't you need registration marks? Because, yeah, don't you need registration marks because you're doing something where you're printing? Normally I would, but just so I can get more out of a sheet of paper, I'm actually going to skip the registration mark process. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send this to my printer, and I'm going to line it up on the cutting mat as best I can and just go ahead and cut it. And hopefully it comes out fairly straight, but even if it doesn't, I'll be able to align it with my manual die, and you'll see that in just a minute. Here's what the piece looks like all cut out. I just justified it on the left-hand side of my mat as straight as I could to get the cuts roughly in the right place, and I'm going to trim them down to 4¼ by 5½, each one of those card sections. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can run them through my Big Shot. And the die I'm using is a Mama Elephant die, the scalloped frame that you see and the actual stitch die that I used for each of the pre-cut and printed puzzle piece front panels are both from the same Mama Elephant die set. Now, to trap the sequins in the front of my card, I'm going to build a small shaker section. So to close off the puzzle piece, I'm using a piece of acetate and some liquid glue. And then I'm going to use quite a bit of dimensional adhesive. I've actually double layered this dimensional adhesive so it stands up quite a bit from the top of the card. And I've decided to make the actual puzzle piece section a lot smaller just so I don't have to use quite as many sequins. Once I finished filling the compartment with sequins, I used a piece of white cardstock to seal the front panel of the card closed. And to make it the perfect size, I used the same exact die that I used for the front panel of the card. Because the front of this card is a little bit heavier than normal, I used quite a bit of Tombow Extreme adhesive to secure the front panel down to the rest of the card. So here's a quick look at the final product. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.